Yo, what's going on YouTube? This is Matt. This is my first video. I wanted to kind of start a series that goes a little bit into detail on some of the nuances in Path of Exile 2. Just simple tricks and tips that you can learn to help you be more effective in clearing maps and actually starting to, attempt the end game. So one of the very first things that I learned when I was trying to play this game was that build guides are essential. They're amazing, they do help, and it's great to follow them, but I think that it's very important that you keep certain things in mind. Remember, the most important thing is whatever your character is currently needing the most now. Now, I'll give you a good example of this. So let's say you're playing a Deadeye. So we'll use a Deadeye as an example. And say you're breaking out of the leveling build, you're following FUB gun setup, whatever. And you just finished the campaign and you are starting to build into, say, like a ton of evasion nodes, or maybe you're going past, down to here to get shimmering, trying to increase your evasion and energy shield. It's important to remember that what actually matters first is, are you clearing? Like, it doesn't matter how defensive you are if you're not actually clearing mobs. Just remember, like, if you're not killing the mobs, no matter how defensive you are currently, you're going to probably be taking more damage. If it's taking you, 5, 6, however many shots to kill mobs, you're going to get surrounded and it's going to be painful, right? So another thing to keep in mind is that these ES and node, like all these evasion and energy shield nodes are great, but they take an extremely high evasion chest piece. Now, this isn't great. This is kind of trolling, to be honest, but you can see that it's far higher than, say it's like a 500 evasion rating. Say you're running like the Coming Calamity or some chest piece. The problem with taking nodes like this, if you don't have a fat chunk of evasion rating, is it doesn't scale properly. So just as an example, we'll use a hypothetical here. Let's say that, you map to all these nodes. You get the increased evasion, and you notice that your percent evasion rating after all this stuff is only like, say, 20%. Maybe after Tailwind and everything, you get all of your stacks, you're sitting at maybe 30-40%, right? That's a notable increase, but you're really not going to notice the massive benefit you get from evasion until you really get to the higher scaling of the later game. Like, someone said it great. I think Rue made a video that was speaking exactly on this topic, and it's like, evasion is absolutely terrible until the very, very upper tier where it's insane and it starts to become crazy. And a good rule of thumb is, if you don't have a fat, flat amount of evasion, it's just not going to scale. So let's say in that same hypothetical, now we have like a 2000 evasion rating chess piece. That's going to punch your numbers well above where it needs to be. Like, so say in our hypothetical that we were at, like 30% or something. That's going to more than double. It's going to start getting multiplicatively. It's just going to start to snowball. You get what I'm saying? So in this example, if you're really struggling and it's low and you don't have, the price range to be able to get the items that you need, I mean, the very first thing that you need to focus on is a decent bow, to get your damage up high, right? And there are various ways to do this. Now, like, a build guide may say to go like 3 projectile, maybe a quite expensive neck piece, but guess what? There are actually some pretty cheap neck pieces that you can get that are going to absolutely help scale your build. I mean, I'm pretty sure you can get like a cheap Astra Mentis you could get it as low as a couple of null right now. And that Astra Mentis, if you allocate Jack of all trades, for instance, is going to scale really well with something like Hand of Wisdom and Action Spiral Wraps. And both of these items you can get fairly cheap. Even in the beginning of a league, I was seeing these super cheap. I mean, nothing crazy. I mean, this one would be several div probably because it has 1 to 12, but getting one with, say, 3 sockets would just throw on an even higher price tag. But again, any amount, it doesn't have to be perfect. It could be on the lower end, and this Hand of Wisdom in Action is going to scale exceptionally well with Astra Mentis, and that's going to give you a ton of stopping power early on in the game. Trust me. Getting your hands on a decent quiver that's got a like high amount of flat damage is another example. So it's nice to have crit chance for attacks. It's nice to have crit damage, but truthfully speaking, I wouldn't worry about stats like that until way late game when you're basically Jeff Bezos. Like, you're just going to want a high flat, maybe an attack speed, maybe a pierce, whatever you can get that has high flat, and scale that with a decent flat fizz, flat light, high percent fizz, plus 2 attack skills bow. If you can get attack speed on it, great. If you can get onslaught on it, great. But what really matters is, again, number 1 is king. I mean, think about it the way that people roll mirror bows. The very first thing that a lot of them try to do after they say fracture 5% crit is they'll go for tier 1 increased fizz damage, right? So that would lead you to believe, or lead anyone to believe, that it's really important to scale your physical damage, right? So if we look at the abilities when it comes to lightning arrow, we're converting a massive chunk of physical into lightning damage. So we're getting a ton out of fizz. Next, of course, would be lightning damage. So what I'm trying to say is high flat fizz, high physical percent, high flat lightning, and that's going to scale very well, right? So, and I can go into a later video that kind of explains how you can best shot for a bow. This is by no means a crazy bow, but I made a lot of use out of this bow for what I paid for it. Again, some really good notable abilities to have would be something like the spring hair. So if you were following Fubgud's hybrid build, for instance, an elemental hybrid build, it scales off of lucky hit, right? And lucky hit is going to take whatever your lightning value is. Notice how it goes 8 to 347. That's a huge range, right? Well, lucky hit makes it so that it rolls on the higher end of that spectrum. We'll say hypothetically, let's just say, as an example, for means of explaining this a little bit better, right, that if you get it on lucky hit, like say it procs lucky hit, say that 20% of the time, now that you have the spring hair, instead of rolling potentially 8 or 12 or 30, it may roll, say, 250, like consistently, right? That is going to be a noticeable spike in your damage, and it's absolutely going to make a big difference. So don't always just go based off of what has the highest DPS. Be able to scope out a bow's worth for how many sockets it has, whether or not you can put like Thane Lelds in it, for instance, to add more lightning damage. Wherever your build currently is, there are a lot of techniques you can do to push it further. I think another thing to kind of cover is mana usage, right? So, for instance, Fubgun doesn't necessarily say that you have to use Walker of the Wilds, but he does mention it. I find that whenever I work with a lot of people that are new players and I'm trying to kind of help them out, it seems as if they kind of skim over certain aspects of guides, but this game definitely is one where you want to pay attention to as much detail as you can. Having something like this, Walker of the Wilds, gives you so much sustain. I mean, just as a general rule of thumb, any Sapphire gem with percent mana on kill is fire. So, I mean, just kind of taking a step back here, you know, and looking at what I'm trying to cover, you know, if you're having trouble clearing, a good example of veering away from a build. So let's say you're following Fubgun's build, but you're having trouble doing damage, and you've spec'd into this node right here, right? This is very powerful once you're able to fully utilize your evasion rating on your chest. And again, I wouldn't even try to do this or map anywhere close to these if you don't have at least maybe like, I would say like this is minimum. And again, I'm kind of trolling here, but I've played the game with like, you know, almost no evasion, no energy shield, and just dodge stuff the best that I can with capped res, right? But it's all in your playstyle. But again, if you're not clearing mobs, you might want to heavily consider getting Crashing Wave. This will stack so nicely with an ability like Innervate. So say your damage is only 37k, right? And you kill a mob with Innervate, that number is going to go up quite substantially, and it stacks with Crashing Wave. So that 37k, after you kill a couple of, like, you know, the second you start shooting your lightning arrow, is gonna go way up to probably like 56 to 60k. So you're almost effectively doubling your damage by just taking this and this gem. Like just taking literally this support gem and this notable. And it's not part of the build, but again, it's about being able to say, what do I really need? Do I really need the evasion rating, or do I really need to be able to clear? Right? And so again, I'm not saying not to follow a guide, but know when to spec in and out. When I was having trouble, before I, started to get this build really working, I'd spec'd into, for instance, because I'm using Hand of Wisdom in action with Astramentus, I went in like Falcon Dive, got some attack speed there, paired it up with Precision Salvo. That really helped me out before I had a ton of skill speed. I got a little bit of extra with rings. I had a buddy set me up with, say, you're struggling with Spirit, you could get an Alpha Howl. Alpha Howl can go up to 120 to Spirit, relatively cheap depending on how high the Spirit is. And if you really are fiending for Spirit, you could get something like the Coming Calamity. And I think I actually might have one of these in my bank here somewhere. Let me see if I can find it. All right. So we can see right here, this item right here, it gives you, this is a crazy item and it's actually kind of expensive. So I'm not suggesting that people get an item like this immediately, but if you have a buddy who like has one laying around, don't be afraid to network and be like, yo, do you got like a TCC that I could borrow for a bit and so I get my build working? Because an item like this is exceptionally powerful when you have literally nothing. Like I'm talking like you get out of the campaign and you have absolutely nothing to help you. This is a powerful resource. Having 3 heralds, the damage you get from that for free, and the spirit that you save, as well as the value you get out of an Alpha Howl paired with an Astramentus Hoa combo, is pretty solid. Now, I'm not trying to teach you guys bad habits at the same time. Build guides have certain progressions built into them for a reason. When you follow Fubgun's guide, he has an incredibly min-max, and everything is in an exact way. Like if I were to just pull up, for instance, let me literally just pull up his guide. So like if we're looking, so this is actually the wrong Keck W. I'm doing this live. This is not like a finalized video, but I'm just kind of putting this together as I go. So let's say we're looking at Fubgun's actual build, right? You'll notice here, if you get on a Mobalytics website, a lot of content creators will have it set up from left to right, several different versions through progression that you can actually go into. So with Fubgun, let's say you're playing a Deadeye, right? His early game is geared to giving you a really good start. The way that he has it progressing through everything, I don't know why it's frozen like this. I guess the shit is like bugging out. But basically, you would follow, the Deadeye tree is actually kind of a meme. You basically just go straight and you form a bow, and that's the Deadeye tree. Like it's literally that simple. Like it's pretty straightforward. But through the campaign, all you really want to focus on is increased damage, projectile damage, some attack speed, increased elemental damage with exploit. Maybe scale into like, lucky hit, for instance, if you wanted to get lightning rod as a passive, right? Things like that can cause your character to snowball. But again, he gears his builds in such a way that it makes sense for that point in time. So it's very important that you keep all of this stuff in mind. I don't know why the website's freaking out on me. Okay, I guess it's working now. For some reason, it was totally freaking out. But you can see that these trees completely change based on where you're at in the game. And the same thing applies to your current gear. If you're hitting the hybrid in-game set, you can see that he's recommending that you take these evasion nodes. But again, if you're not clearing the content, it's always best to take a step back and say, could I get more benefit from Crashing Wave? Would I get more benefit from Life from Death, for instance? Maybe you got like a really nice time loss gem and you want to throw it in here and maybe pick up some of these life on kill notables and then stack it with like maybe like a sapphire gem, something like that. Be my guest, it'll help give you more benefit out of it in that time when you need it the most. But I just kind of wanted to cover just like some basics. You know what I mean? I feel like what a lot of players are scared to do is kind of break out of the mold of following a guide, it's not that the guide's bad. It's just you got to use what you can and what you need the most and find when that is to be done. I am totally not making sense here probably, but basically whatever your character needs the most, tailor your notables to fit that void, right? And oftentimes it's damage and clear speed. It's about identifying the right stats, getting the right amount of flat damage, being able to know how it works functionally with like mechanisms like lucky hit, how that works, and multiplying your damage, etc. Right? So anyways, I just wanted to make kind of a quick video guide that kind of runs down that information. But again, try and focus on getting damage, focus on clear. Once you focus on clear, build towards saving currency, buying your first bow, getting a decent quiver, expand from there. This has been Quick Tips with Matt. I definitely want to cover this more in depth on a later video, but I felt like just covering a couple of topics. Let me know if you guys like the way that I've done this video. I'm new to YouTube, but I definitely have a desire to create more content and will begin streaming very shortly. All right. See you later, Exiles. Peace.